And we are live. Great. So, welcome to the show today. Today, I'm here with Nicola Plain, and he's the CEO of Aktionariat. And I'm super excited to talk to you. I think we met at a conference a couple of months ago or so. I saw you a few times on stage, and I was just really inspired by what you guys are building. And but more on that later. We'll dive into that in a minute. So Nicola, thank you so much for being here. Maybe you can say a few words about yourself before we dive into the essence of today's questions.
Yes, thanks a lot for having me at the show. I'm really excited to be here. Yeah, thanks a lot for the invitation. As you said, my name is Nicola Plain. I'm the CEO of Aktionariat. Aktionariat is a company that lets you create a market for your shares without having the need to go public on an exchange, a traditional exchange, but just with a few tools and for very little costs. So very revolutionary way to make your shares tradable.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. So let's dive right in. So I want to talk about you first as a person, as a human being, and then we talk a little bit more about the company and your journey. So just to start it off, if you had to describe your essence as a person in one word, what would that be?
Yeah, maybe persistence. Yeah,
Why is that?
so
What's
that's
up with persistence? What with persistence?
yeah. Just truly believe that it needs some persistence to achieve something great. And the moments where you want to give up and when it's getting hard and you're not sure if you're going to succeed, when you show persistence in these moments, that's when you can you can make a difference compared to others where most of the people would give up and you just stay persistent and keep going. And that's what I'm trying to do. And I really believe that it can make the difference at the end of the day. So, and it's not only with work, but with everything I do. I try to be persistent and do things not just for a year or two, but over the course of several years, and yeah, keep doing what I do.
That's a great it's a great topic. I mean, persistence is something that is I think is key to a lot of things, and maybe we're going to dive into that now a little bit more. I'm curious to see where we're going with that, but like looking back at your journey so far that you had as a, in your professional career, if you had to pick one defining moment that you feel that that's something that really shaped me or some experience, what would that be?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, I think I learned a lot from university, from my bachelor degree when I moved to St. Gallen, and I was at the University of St. Gallen. I learned a lot, also mentality-wise, working hard and pushing forward, trying to achieve great results. But then maybe at one point when I got the chance to work as an external consultant for a large company, a global company, and I saw the chance to really do something fun where you can make a difference, and that's maybe where I really decided to go hard and to give it all to achieve the results that I wanted to achieve. So I've seen this chance, and then I really worked for several years as an external consultancy for this company, and I really kind of took a very general decision to do everything that is needed to make this client happy and to move forward with my career. And maybe one moment where this materialized happened several times, but the first time when I really had to finish something for a presentation the next day. And I went home after a long day of work, and I wasn't done yet, but I really wanted to have it finished for the next day. So what I did is I ate something and then worked the whole night through. and went back to the office the next morning, worked another 8 or 10 hours, and then after more or less 36 hours of work without sleep, I was very tired but happy because I knew I achieved everything that I wanted. The client was extremely happy that I made it in time. So that was a moment when I really thought, okay, it paid off to not go to sleep, but to keep pushing. And yeah, that was just a very good sign that hard work pays off.
I love that. It reminds me of, one or two instances, when we worked on, these crazy pitches and we had, night shift and, worked until 5 o'clock in the morning and then had, the meeting with the client at 9 a.m. and, no sign of being tired or whatever. And it's like really interesting. Like, of course, I don't think it's very healthy to do that on a weekly basis. But it's, to me, it's very interesting how these things on the one side shape you, but also of what actually happens, because like there's a certain energy and excitement and drive and passion and a motivation that goes into it that just keeps you awake. And at some point, I guess, by biological standards, you're probably just going to fall asleep. But it's really interesting to be what happens there. And I want to dive a little bit more into the topic of motivation and drive. What is it for you that drives you every day? Why do you drive change in that industry every single day? What's the motivation?
I ask myself very often the same questions, and I'm not really sure what it is. For me personally, I just feel like something that is constantly pushing me to do something and to not be lazy. Also, when I took time off sabbatical, I took a trip around the world, but I actually came back after half of the time that it was planned, because I wasn't satisfied with just traveling and kind of consuming and not producing anything. That didn't make me happy at all. So I had to come back before and start a new venture. So I don't know. There's something in me that just keeps on knocking and saying, "Hey, you're not done yet. We want to accomplish something here." That yeah, just keeps me motivated, and I can't really tell what it is, but it's just something that I always realize when I have a moment of weakness, let's say, that there is something in me that just doesn't accept being tired or taking a break, but keeps pushing me. But I don't know what that is. And then of course I just enjoy working with people that are skilled and highly motivated, and work together with them to fulfill a higher purpose. And in our case with Aktionariat, we're really intrigued by the idea of providing a new way of setting up the financial system with more responsibility in the masses, more democratized way of setting up this whole financial system. And this is a very nice vision which motivates us a lot, and makes sure that we get up every morning and come to the office very motivated and work together on difficult problems, and not letting hold us back by obstacles. So because we really have this vision where we want to go to, and we think this will provide a lot of value for humanity in general. So in the case of Aktionariat, I would say that's what keeps us very motivated and busy at the same time.
It's really interesting. Like, it feels like you as a person, it's really about, not being a consumer, but being a producer. It's like, you want to produce something. So you actually, I mean, what is producing? It's creating value in the world, right? So that's what really, I guess, drives you instead of consuming value. It's more the producing of value, which is interesting, which I think a lot of entrepreneurs have in common. There's probably a
Yeah,
reason, right? And the other
very
thing,
true.
and the other thing about Aktionariat, I want to dive a little bit more into that, which is probably very well connected, to your vision as well. Otherwise, you wouldn't be the CEO of the company, I guess. So I'm curious to hear what future do you see? So we take stock exchanges, capital markets, tokenization. We look into the future. what's the future that you see, and why is it not going to be as it is today?
Yeah, I mean, based on blockchain technology, there's a lot of potential for efficiency. So we can set up everything much more efficiently, and by that saving costs. That's the one thing. But then the other thing is that with blockchain technology, you have the possibility to take on much more responsibility than before. So before you always had to delegate to an intermediary, to a bank or whatever. And now you really have the opportunity to take that responsibility yourself. And with this responsibility, of course, it also some risks come into play that you have to manage yourself and you can't delegate anymore. But that's really what we are hoping to see in future. Of course, no one can tell how this will develop, but in our hopes and our beliefs, we will have a future where the financial system is much more democratized, and responsibilities is much more with the masses instead of just central institutions. To what extent this will really play out, we will see. Of course, no one can tell. But of course, we took partly a bet that this self-responsibility, democratization of financial markets will take place. And future will tell if we took the right bet or not. But in general, I would say it's a future with more responsibility with the masses, less intermediaries that take responsibility. And that way a more democratized financial system. And then at the end of the day, the consumers will tell what they want and where this will go, or to what extent we can and are willing to achieve that.
Yeah, I love that mix of, like, on the one side where you shared about democratizing. To me, like, when I talked to you first, that was the essence of what I felt, is what you're pursuing when it comes to the, the vision and the mission of where you want, where you're going and why you're doing that. The other part is, the efficiency that you mentioned. I think that's an integral part of achieving democratization. It has to be very efficient. It has to be direct. It has to, not have three middlemen in between, for it to be democratized. And that's the reason why I love what you guys are building, because it's very close to me and also my my I guess my personal needs, of what I'm interested in. And I want to talk a little bit more about Aktionariat, but in general about how you went about things, or how you go about things. I'm just super curious to understand a little bit more. And what I want to start is at the product market fit. Like, how did you get there? How did you get where you are today when it comes to the market and actually your product and getting that together?
Yeah, very good question. I mean, we started with Lucius and Murat, who originally founded the company, two people that are strong believers in this DeFi world and decentralized finance, and the whole potential, the untapped potential, also to a certain extent, that they have seen. So they set up the tools in a way that works very well in this DeFi scene. So if you are familiar with DeFi and you know a little bit something about blockchain and responsibilities and so on, the tool from the beginning was ready to use. But if you wanted to make it accessible really for the masses who are not familiar with blockchain, with self-custody wallets, for example, then of course you have to provide a different solution, or let's say different options. And that's what we started to do after we launched and we gained first experience and have seen what the market really wanted. So we started to move a bit away from this pure DeFi solution and try to make it usable also for the broader masses. So for people that do not have any experience with DeFi, for example. And of course, in the first moment, that was not always well received also within the company, because we really feel like we are DeFi, and this is also in the philosophy of the company. But at the end of the day, we realized at some point that just having a product that is only for a certain type of users wouldn't make us successful, and probably DeFi adoption and adoption of blockchain in general will take a couple of more years to materialize. So what do we do until then? So that's why we started to enhance the products, if you want so, or just tailor them also towards a different user that is not familiar with DeFi. So we came from a very DeFi blockchain oriented product, and now are moving more towards also other user types that are not familiar with blockchain at all. And it's always not an easy job to find the right balance, because we really want to stick to our identity, to our DNA of DeFi and blockchain, but at the same time we will also want to have a as large as possible addressable market, if you want to put it that way. So that's always a challenge to find the right balance there.
Yeah, it's interesting, and also you probably don't want to wait those years for everything to catch up, so that the market will be ready for your product, but you probably want to flip it around, right? You want to make the product fit for the market today, so it can grow with the market while representing your values and what you stand for at the same time. And yeah, I want to dive a little bit more into this topic of digital products and digital solutions, just to understand like your point or your perspective on the essence. If you had to come up with like a couple of bullet points about like what makes a digital product or a digital solution successful, what would those bullet points be?
Yeah, first of all, of course, you have to address a need, and then the market with this need has to be big enough in order to be successful. So maybe you're able to address a need, but only 100 people have that need. So you have to have a very expensive product for it to be successful, right? So there has to be a need, and the market has to be big enough, of course. And if you want to serve a certain need, of course, you also have to come up with a solution that is usable for the market that you want to address. And then, of course, maybe the third point, what you always hear, and I also think is extremely important, is just timing. You have to come up with the right solution at the right time and address the right market. And I think if you have these three criteria and you can check them, then I think you already have a lot. And then, of course, it's about the team. Is the team able to execute in a way that beats the competition, that really finds the right product market fit, and so on, and also sticks together for a long time? That's also a very crucial part. So yeah, besides the three mentioned points, I would say then it all comes down to the performance of the team.
Okay, cool. Thanks for sharing. I want to dive one more layer into product market fit and making it usable and just like that part. How did you guys go about that? You mentioned the DeFi solution, right? Which was like really for DeFi people, which is great, but you wanted to have something that was applicable to different market segment. So how did you bring them together? Did you do certain, I don't know, research, interviews? Did you do survey? Like, did you just talk to people, or how did you bring them together, like practically?
Yeah, so going out with an MVP has a huge advantage that you start very early with gathering experience and talking to potential or existing clients, talking to. We have both sides. So we have a B2B part of the clients, and we have a B2C part of clients, and talking to all of them and finding out where they have troubles using our solution, what they would wish for in addition. That's how we really learned what the market wants, where we have weaknesses that we could improve. So yeah, basically we didn't like conduct any studies or send out questionnaires or something, but it was just by talking to a lot of, and I would say by now at least 600 or 700 potential clients on the company side, and at least the same amount of clients on the investor side. We just learned a lot, and also, I mean, every day is a chance to learn. So we receive emails from users having troubles. So you could either just solve the problem and tell them what to do, or you could just then think of, okay, is it the only one having this problem, or is it a general problem? Is it something that we could improve? So yeah, with interaction and people using our tools, we learn a lot, and I would say that's enough field study for the moment to take it as a base to improve our products.
I mean, what you just said there in the last part, I find so interesting because it is so easy to receive feedback and complaints and then deal with them and then close the ticket, right? That's that's easy. That's just set up a process, get it done, have people take care of it and all good. And that's in my experience what usually happens. That's just how it's done, right? Solve it, it's good. But what you just described, takes this to an entirely new level because you turn issues into opportunities by what you just said. You receive complaints or issues or feedback in general, and you don't just solve them or process them, but you look at them as feedback to improve. And I think that's just something that probably has to be ingrained in the company's DNA, or the way people think and the way people look at things. And I just find this nugget so interesting because I feel like if this were the standard in all industries, we would have so much better products and so much better services, if we just didn't try to solve problems and issues, but actually looked at them as ways to improve and change and adopt. And yeah.
Of course, it's always easier to do that as a small and very agile company that is still in a process of finding the exact sweet spot. Whereas if you're a large company with a established product set and a lot of clients, it's more difficult, and also you should choose very wisely what to do next. Of course, also in our case, but in our case, usually it's very interesting learnings that we get, because we are all kind of used to blockchain and DeFi, so sometimes we don't even see where users could have troubles that are not familiar with this. So I think in for companies that are in very early stages or more or less early stages, it's much more important, but also it's easier to respond to market demands and take learnings from customer feedbacks. Yeah, so we really try to do that day by day, and then sometimes also if we have a very good client on the B2B side, we talk to them and they just reflect what they think is missing, and then sometimes we just implement new features based on a single customer's demand if we think that it could be useful also for other clients, of course.
Thanks for sharing. Really appreciate it, Nicola. Something else I want to dive into a little more is your journey so far and like the lessons that you've learned. So if let's just maybe simplify it and take one or two lessons. But if you look back at your past years on your professional journey and with Aktionariat, what are some of the key lessons that you've learned along the way?
Yeah, maybe the most important for me personally is stay flexible. because you never know what the future brings. So maybe if you start university, you have an idea of what you want to do in the future, and then maybe it turns out differently. And yeah, you just have to stay flexible. Also, I started one or two startups some years back, and they didn't go so well. And when I started them, of course, I had a clear idea on where this should go and where the startup will be in a couple of years. And then maybe at some point you just have to take a hard decision and say, okay, that's not going to work out that way. I have to change something. And then in these moments, it's extremely important that you stay flexible in your mind and you just stick to the core of what you think are your capabilities. So if you're sure about your capabilities, it's not so important what you do, but that you do it with a certain persistence and intensity, of course. And the rest is not so crucial. So if you have that mindset, it's easier to stay flexible and take on opportunities as they present themselves. And that's what I did quite a few times. So after a phase that was extremely successful, I just wanted to do something different. Then there was a phase where maybe it was a bit more difficult than before, and then just opportunities presented, and I was able to take a difficult decision, but a decision that also showed that I'm highly flexible, and I think this always paid out. So if you're like focused too much on something extremely specific, then I think this could also be an obstacle for you, because other opportunities could present that you then maybe do not grab because you're focused too much on a very specific goal. But if you have a bit broader goal in life or in for your career in general, then it allows you to stay flexible within certain boundaries, of course. And I think that is extremely valuable, because you never know what the future brings. And sometimes it's just extremely beneficial if you keep a certain flexibility. Yeah.
I can totally see how flexibility plus persistence is a really great recipe. I can totally see that. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's what helped me a lot along the path that I took so far. Yeah, really being persistent in general, but then also flexible. You could also say it's strategic decision and then tactics, right? So you have a strategy where you want to go, a very kind of broad idea where this should lead you, and then you have to be very tactical at moments where you maybe have to adjust a little bit, not the whole strategy, but the tactics within this broader strategy. There's a nice book about that. It's I think written from von Clausewitz, Vom Kriege it's called. So it's I only know it in German, but it's about war, more or less, translated. And he really describes the relationship between strategy and tactics in war, because he was a war general, I think, in the Second or First World War. So that's also was a very interesting lesson that I read in that book about the relationship between strategy and tactics. I can highly recommend that. It's not a very thick book, so it's easy and fast to read, but with some very nice insights.
Thanks for sharing. So there's one more question I have. I want to wrap this conversation up with, and this is like ways out into the future, but I always like to ask it. Let's imagine you're 80 years old now, and you look back at your life, and you look back at how the world has changed, and maybe how your industry has changed, and how the things have changed that you have impacted over the years and that you've been engaged with. At that time, looking back, what's the change that you want to see?
Very personally, we really have to make sure that this earth will be livable for future generations. And that's one thing that concerns me a bit, that I don't really see change in people's behavior. Everyone is kind of waiting for someone else to do something. But as a matter of fact, we could all change a little something in our lives, which would, in the masses, then have a huge effect. So I really hope that we will be able to change our behaviors and live a life that is maybe a bit more minimalistic in general, and a bit more conscious, and also doesn't put us in the middle of everything. um, I think it's very important that we realize that we are only part of this whole nature that we have on Earth, but not only on Earth, but in the galaxy. And we don't take ourselves so serious as we do today with this whole individualism and so on. We have to realize that we have one common goal that we need to achieve in the next few decades, and that is making sure that future generations are able to live worthy life on this planet. And where we are going right now, that will not happen, and that's what something that really concerns me. And if I had one wish, that would be the wish. Everything else is a nice to have, but if we don't have a planet where we as human beings can live on, then what's the point of everything else?
I love that. And it's a beautiful note to wrap this up with. And be sure we're going to watch this interview in, 50, 60 years from today. And we'll see where we stand. And I hope we're going to go in that direction that you described. And I especially what I love about what you mentioned is the behavior. Because sometimes we can make things so incredibly complicated and complex, but in essence, it would be incredibly simple, right? If 7.5 or 8 billion people made, a change of 1%, what would that mean, right? What would that mean? I mean, it would completely change everything. And I love that part because he said, I think the way he's described it is behavior basically. And yeah, Nicola, thank you so much. It was really, really nice being here with you. Appreciate your time. And
Thank you.
yeah, you're on LinkedIn too. We're both on LinkedIn. Everybody can connect with us as well. And thanks again, Nicola, for being here. And I wish you a great day.
Thank you, Daniel. Very welcome. Thanks for having me. It was a great pleasure. And yeah, reach out if you have more questions about me or our solution. Happy to answer. And yeah, also to maybe take on this discussion that we started here, if you want to. Yeah, happy to hear about anyone. Okay, thanks a lot. And